I did just share that we had Reverend Dr. Marthacreek with us today. She gave that wonderful meditation for us. For those of you who may not be familiar with her, she has been trained and facilitates with the practices of healthy congregations, self-differentiation, Byron Katie's The Work. She is a speaker. She is a retreat leader. She is a facilitator. She pushes you, invites you, welcomes you, holds you through that process, lets you go so that you can start it all over again. And most importantly, for me at least, she is a very inspiring friend to so many of us and really to Unity on the Bay. Whether you have known of her or not, you have lived into her energy because her teachings and her consciousness is part of the fabric of what we feel every Sunday here at Unity on the Bay. And so with that, I invite us to give a warm welcome to Martha.
Well, he called me a friend. I think he's called me mentor over the years. You know, anybody that's older than you, hopefully is a mentor. I've also been called tormentor. So part of the talk today is to look at the simultaneous existence of these parts of ourselves. And that what was a dark night of the soul for some of us also served as a spiritual awakening. A literal, metaphorical, physical, metaphysical, spiritual awakening from some of the darkest times that we had, some of the disconnection, the feeling abandoned by God. Like, where is God in this? Anybody had a thought? Like, if there's a God, now would be a good time to know something about it? So it's like, and to let that be part of the reality, the lay of the land for our humanness. It's absolutely included. And I was thinking as I listened to these lyrics, several decades ago, I had a spiritual awakening. I've had several. And one was that for any time I heard music, I was going to listen to it as intently as possible because it was God's speak to me. Every word, every lyric. And that the lyrics then became part of my devotion, part of my making sure that throughout the day that I was going to stay in a bigger connection with Source, a bigger awareness, a bigger atonement, a more expansive atonement than what I had customarily lived. And then I was able to sing back some of the lyrics in my devotion to God. That Reverend Juan said that Dale makes in the music team here, which is extraordinary, extraordinary. Praise. Praise. So what if it's true that all we actually need is God? God as you understand it. God is higher power. God is awareness. God is consciousness. God is life. God is breath. God is faith. God is love. God is devotion. God is prayer. God is what keeps me from kicking somebody in the shin when they don't do it my way. I mean, we're all just a thought away from it, right? And then this is a part of this spiritual awakening to accept this part of ourselves. We're just a hair above an animal. If evolution is true, we're just a hair above an animal. So the fact that we can have an impulse like that and not react is its own miracle. Talk about grace. And then so many chances to practice. Like even here this morning among our divine beings gathered here in this so wonderful ministry. I do love you. And I love you more than my luggage, which is what I used to say. And then now I don't travel as much. So now I love you more than bacon. And I love you more than Butterfingers. So whatever that may be, so then people were working so hard this morning to make this Sunday service jubilation that for you. High energy, caring, your connection, a spiritual awakening. So they were unloading their cars and setting up their cars and bringing in these beautiful decorations. Then somebody would come in and get it all organized just like they liked it. And then some other divine being would come in and go, oh. And then they'd come up here and rearrange it. Peace again. Then they would leave, and then somebody would come. So there was a lot of creativity going on here this morning. Now, get a sense then of what it would have been like if you had to set it up just like you like it, and some high, mighty, righteous type came in behind you and moved it when you wasn't looking. How would that have gone with you? So put your hand on your heart. And let that part of you that would likely have been hurt or irritated or frustrated or just a little let down or reactive, let that part know that's okay. That reaction is wired in you. It's wired in you. It's okay. And you're not faulty or flawed because you have that reaction. It's okay. It's okay. And this then awakens then hopefully all the parts of ourselves to where times of radiance and we're times of regret. And we're times of radiance, and we're times of rumbling, where we can't make sense of things. We can't comprehend how things could be going this way. How could they think that way? How could they do that way? How could they do that? How could they not do that? So all of this is included. And then those of you that are into this work, this Carolyn Mace's work, which was the small group study and the spirit group study, then you've taken a journey through this. Those of you that haven't been a participant in that, you still can. So the book is entitled Anatomy of the Spirit. And it takes us through our whole being, the grounded part of our being, into the emotional part of us, the forgiving heart part of us, into the way we speak and think and express, and then into the crown chakra this week. Then all of that to have a literal spiritual awakening. So not a spiritual awakening that'll come, but a spiritual awakening right now, today, that says, my devotion to being and expressing what I'm singing and what I'm praying makes the difference. My awareness of God as source, as breath, as life, as hands, as feet, as face, as all of it makes a difference in how I am and will be today in this world, in the way I am in the world. And she encourages us to make a choice like this on a daily basis. And I don't know for you, but I have to do it more often than daily. So before I fire that email off to somebody, before I fire that text off to that knucklehead, before I rearrange things that don't belong to me, before I insert myself into something that is none of my business. So moment by moment, interaction by interaction. So I pulled a few quotes. You'll have the Carolyn Mace quotes, they're in the book. So these comes from some other mystics and teachers. Let's see, this is a part of where you would want to give me the inner. When you think about suffering is a gift. right? Anybody wake up and go, bring on the suffering? No sane person would do that. And is suffering included? Altogether, is suffering included in the human learning processes? Altogether. See, we could have a little choir. Yes, yes. This is why they don't let me sing. Yes, suffering is included. Suffering is included in our human journey. Out of suffering have emerged some of the strongest souls we've known about, read about. Out of suffering has arisen the most massive characters that even with the scars, even with the suffering, dusted themselves off, wrestled in those dark nights, wrestled in those losses, wrestled in that change, and said, I will get up again. I just watched a documentary with Celine Dion. Did any of y'all see it? And what happened went from this to can't move. And then what it took. And she said, the truth is, I've traveled the world and I've seen very little of it. Because I was there for the people. She was there in service. She was there from a small age. She knew exactly what she was on the earth for, what she was here to do. And then if she eventually says, so when I can't run, I walk. And when I can't walk, I crawl. You all have lived this way. You've lived great losses, great devastations, rejections, abandonment, betrayals, physical losses, financial losses, emotional pain, and you're still here today, dusted off and in the game of life that says, I'm a part of a spiritual community that is inspired to bring the realization of divinity to my humanness, and in living that, to make it possible for other humans to do that. You're going to be happy, but first, life will make you strong. So we're happy at times. We're sad at times. What if part of our journey here this morning opened to the reality that it's both and that my existence, my divinity is in my allowing the sadness and the happiness to both be valid parts of me. Both are included. Instead of don't be sad, don't be sad, don't be sad. And what's it like when someone tells you not to be sad when you're sad? What's that like? I did a talk just a few weeks ago that was entitled, Don't Let Our Spirituality Make Us Mean. So think about when you were in the depths of suffering, your own dark night. Carolyn Mace calls it a dark night of the soul. When you were less connected, less radiant, less joyful, grieved. And what some of us well-intended, high righteous spiritual people may have said to you. What was that like? This is the reason not to do this. And not to do it anymore. Not to do it to ourselves. And not to do it to another person if we can stop ourselves. Suffering is included. Suffering has been stronger than most of our teachers, most of our teaching. Suffering has taught me to understand what my heart is and what my heart would be if it was in its own nature, what it used to be. I have been bent and broken, and I hope the bent and broken has left me in better shape. Can you testify to that? Yes, I was bent. Yes, I was challenged. Yes, I was struggling. Yes, I have had those experiences, and I am stronger now. That I'm also in the presence of a grit, a resilience, something that says one more step, one more day, one more attempt, one more reach across the aisle, one more forgiveness, one more shedding the resentments, one more shedding the grudges. A lived spiritual awakening. So think about it then. What's stopping you? What stops you from living what you know? What stops you from letting the heart that is the heart of your highest self lead? And aware of how this wants to lead, and how to be with it with more compassion, more understanding, and more devotion, more regulation to say, I understand what you're doing. I understand the triggers. I understand what put them in place. I understand. I extend compassion to that. And if you can, pull back just a little to let another part of us lead. And then through our prayers and meditation, reflections, contemplations, walking, forgiveness, whatever your spiritual practice is, then is the ways to do this. And that's what the workshop will be about this afternoon. If you can come over there to the office space and think about somebody that's not here maybe that is suffering now, or may have suffered just enough, and encourage them to come. They can still come. So the third step in this, spiritual awakening, admitting that there is dark times and dark nights and that suffering is included. And then the final phase of this, the need for devotion. And through devotion, then our endurance is dialed up. More resilience, more grit, more ability, more capability to do this. And then in doing that, then what will we devote ourselves to? What does devotion look like to you? What are you devoted to? And remember this, I'm devoted to them agreeing with me when I get over there on Thanksgiving, after all I've done for God. What's the chances? So I'm devoted to being and expressing who I am. I'm devoted to living as much into spiritual awareness as I can, especially when they don't agree with me, especially when they cross me, especially when they blame me, especially when they accuse me, especially when they espouse their convictions and their values and they don't align with mine. We're in a high, auspicious time for this. Before Thanksgiving, an election that calls us to the depths of devotion on how we're going to be with this and who we're going to be in this. Carolyn Mace describes devotion as nothing that is passive, but is active, an active way of living. How will you dial up your devotion today? So what if we actually embrace the light and the shadow, the radiance and the rumblings, and remember in it all that we are held by a love that transcends all of it, a love that is guiding us toward spiritual awakening, spiritual realization, and that in all things it is there, in all pain and all emotion. And then I was called this morning and I shared, like, my favorite quotes. Unity's founders are Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And I've had an experience of them that has benefited me now for all these years, going on 3 decades of this. And Charles said, reportedly around age 87, I fairly sizzle with zeal. I fairly sizzle with zeal. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. And here's my favorite part: to do what is mine to do. Not as what theirs to do, not as what the young ones to do, but to do what I'm here to do. That's plenty. Friends, that's plenty. And then Myrtle Fillmore's, that's bolstered me up and inspired me over the years, that I return to often, says something along the lines of, you have within you, right here and right now, the God-given gifts to create the world you want to experience. We have within us, I have within me, you have within you already, right here, right now, today, the God-given gifts, all that we can have. I don't have his gifts. I don't have her gifts. I have the gifts I've been given. But within that is the innate, inherent power for me to create and co-create the world I sing about and pray about. Then my favorite part of the quote is this: get at it. Let's get at it, shall we? So look at somebody by you and go, let's get at it. Let's get at it. And then put your hand on your heart and remind all your parts, let's get at it. And so be it.
marthacreek.com if I can support you. Blessings.